Advancing Africa's developmental agenda is expected to take center stage at the BRICS Summit in Kazan, Russia. President Ramaphosa is attending the two-day summit tomorrow. BRICS, originally formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, has expanded significantly this year. New members include Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Joined now by Professor Patrick Bond from the University of Johannesburg's Department of Sociology. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks very much for your time. We've been talking over the years about the importance of BRICS, a new world order and all of that. But has BRICS really delivered on that promise?
Well, thanks for having me, Vuyo. Greetings to your viewers. Look, for the major accomplishment, the BRICS New Development Bank, the NDB, there's been about $33 billion worth of loans. Those are quite concrete. The question is, are they any different than what the borrowers would have done if they had just the existing multilateral development banks or private lenders? The West has most of the money. That's been a bit of a problem for African countries that borrowed from them and then have gone bankrupt because the interest rates went up so high in 2022, or from local lenders. And I think the BRICS New Development Bank isn't yet a success. And it's partly because they've been under the thumb of the New York credit rating agencies. Just one example of that is that they actually put a boycott on lending to Russia after it invaded Ukraine in early March 2022. The BRICS New Development Bank joined the Western banks because of the power of these Fitch, Standard & Poor's and Moody's credit rating agencies. And unfortunately, our bankers are still very much suffering a gaze to the West. They haven't figured out how to do the kind of business with the rest of the BRICS that would make sense.
Now, the fact that South Africa enjoyed this sit alongside Brazil, Russia, India and China, how important, or how has the expansion, and the inclusion of your Irans, your Egypt and your Ethiopias, your UAEs, Saudi Arabias, how has that affected, South Africa's status?
Well, it's been diluted because of the fact that we've now got 10, but we have to put an asterisk under Saudi Arabia because of its westward orientation. If Donald Trump is elected president on November 5th, I'm pretty sure that Riyadh won't go into the BRICS. They'll go back to a strong relationship with Washington. Now, the dilemma for that dilution effect is that where you really want to have a strong, unified BRICS, it's very hard to get it. And they tried, for example, to have a peace summit around Israel, Palestine last year, November, and they couldn't come up with anything. To be frank, I wasn't that surprised because 9 out of the 10, with the exception of Iran, have very strong profiting trading relations, investment relations, in some cases military relations with Israel. So we don't really see yet the BRICS doing anything new and different, but there is that potential, especially because the US is really fed up with overproduction, which they accused China of basically putting too many electric vehicles and solar panels and batteries, as if there could be too much in a climate catastrophe. And the relationship, of course, with Russia around its invasion of Ukraine still creates problems in energy markets and food markets. That's where our inflation came from and where many African countries then went bankrupt. Zambia, Ethiopia, a member of BRICS, Ghana, Kenya on the edge of it when they had a social revolution in June. You see the ways that the problems that aren't really being solved in the BRICS trickle down and create lots of dilemmas in Africa, the most important being the climate catastrophe, because with just 29% of global GDP, the BRICS are producing 51% of greenhouse gas emissions.
Maybe I should ask, does it matter that South Africa's, and I'm asking this wrong, does it matter that South Africa's status has now been diluted? Does it take away anything?
If South Africa wants something, I'm talking really about the elites in Pretoria, if they want, for example, a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, we found that this expansion is a little too chaotic. And the reason is, about 3 weeks ago in the New York meetings of the General Assembly, where the BRICS foreign ministers had a side meeting, they had to close it down early because Egypt and Ethiopia's foreign ministers said, actually, we don't want South Africa to represent one of the two African seats. The other, usually discussed, is Nigeria. And so that represents this one moment where the Brazilian foreign minister had to say, oh, we have to stop this meeting. It was in fact unique. And that means that whether it's China and India on the mountain border, which is the source of many conflicts, or the South China Sea, the islands that China is taking, or the potential that the West Asian, the Middle Eastern conflagration, in which you have Iran on one side, you have Saudi Arabia and UAE and Egypt on the other side. This, let's say, isn't really working as a team. It's still a group of symbolically inclined, supposedly anti-Western countries, but really they are still stuck, for the most part, within Western power. Just one other example is that they have a major stake in the International Monetary Fund. But as much as I search, I just have not seen them do anything different. The same with the World Trade Organization. Even a couple of weeks ago, our own Parks Tao, the trade minister, said we will respect the WTO and therefore not impose coal export sanctions on Israel. That's the degree, I'm afraid, Vuyo, that the Western power structure still retains such clout that the business-minded BRICS members, Johannesburg being the site, August of 2023, where it was really on display, where we couldn't get a new currency commitment. Those Western business leaders, Western inclined and Western gazing elites are really not allowing BRICS to do what it could do.
If you were a Cyril Ramaphosa, keen on setting the agenda for tomorrow's meeting, what would be foremost in your mind today?
Well, if Ramaphosa could really look at this realistically and say that one of the core problems and one of the core solutions the BRICS have, at least rhetorically advanced, is de-dollarization, then you'd have to not listen to the finance minister, Enoch Godongwana, or the Reserve Bank governor, Lesego Kganyago, or the main banker in Johannesburg, Sim Tshabalala from Standard. In August 2023, here in Johannesburg, they said, we're not going to have de-dollarization. So if I were Ramaphosa, I'd say, no, we really need to. The dollar power of the US Fed is really malevolent. It's irrational. It leads to terrible injustices. The interest rate increases one day and the quantitative easing the next, the bailing out of the Western banks, not the rest of the world's banks. That needs reaction. So if I were Ramaphosa or advising him, I'd say, well, let's put on some exchange controls and really start an alternative currency system with other BRICS countries. However, as I say, I'm not expecting that. I come from the left, and my critique is that our elites are still too Western corporate oriented. And if I were sitting in Brasilia or in Mumbai or New Delhi or in Shanghai or even in Moscow, I would probably say the same thing.